Hi, everybody. Welcome to #PinBlab, also known as the Pictures to Profits podcast. I am joined by the wonderful and amazing Kate, Kate Au, and she is the principal owner of Simple Pin Media. But I don't want to hog up the conversation. I'm going to get Kate to talk about herself. And today's topic is about planning a great Pinterest strategy. So, Kate, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I actually live in Portland, Oregon. I'm a mom of three, and I just actually started Simple Pin about 2 years ago, not quite 2 years ago. But I saw the need for Pinterest management and people to learn more about Pinterest because they just felt so overwhelmed with Pinterest in itself. It felt mysterious. So I wanted to be able to break it down to make it really simple, easy for people to understand, and not feel like they had just one more thing to do, like one more plugin to install or one more Facebook strategy to learn, just to make it easy, simple. And if they needed us to manage completely for them, we could do it.
That's awesome. So, Kate, I don't know if you're allowed to disclose the numbers, but I know you are a Pinterest agency. Are you able to share with our audience how many accounts that your team manages? Because I know you're really good at it.
Yeah, well, thanks. Yeah, we have 38 right now, and I have a team of 10. So I don't just do it by myself, but what we do is we try to create just a good strategy for each and every one of our clients, and they are so different. And so we've kind of slowly onboarded over time. I never thought it would get that big, to be honest. I thought it was just going to be me with just 5 or so accounts, and then I just kept getting flooded with requests and realized I could actually teach a group of people how to do it alongside me. So then the team grew from there.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of amazing. It's almost like the entrepreneurial dream. You start off
Oh,
small, things
totally.
get so big. I mean, that's amazing. And so that's why when I think of Pinterest strategy, I think of you now because you have so much experience. You've seen the
Yeah.
waves. So let's kind of dive right into it and talk about what actually makes a good Pinterest strategy. Where should people start off?
So I really think first they need to start off by identifying their ideal customer, their ideal reader, follower. Once I actually heard Tish Oxenreider from The Art of Simple describe that she knew exactly who her person was, down to the name. And I found that so fascinating because at that point you could really identify exactly what you should be pinning or writing, because Pinterest strategy really starts with good content back on your website. And so if you're writing good content, if you're writing for that person, that's going to translate and shift over to Pinterest. And so really figuring out first who that person is. Then I think digging into your analytics. If you've been on Pinterest for a while and you've had a business account, you're going to find some good information in there about where people are pinning your content, what type of content they're pinning, and if there's a certain theme to it. If you haven't been on Pinterest a while, you're going to want to look back at your Google Analytics and look for maybe your top 10 posts, what's already really driving traffic for you. And then try to maximize those, make them really good for Pinterest, and start pinning them. And so once you start pinning, you have to have a good foundation of a board that's prepared for that content. So really cleaning up your boards. I see a lot of people who they casually have used Pinterest for a while, but they really don't know how to transition personal to business. So you have these accounts with kind of a mix of both. And so really getting those boards prepared is a solid foundation, cleaned up and ready and prepared for that content. And then just start scheduling or just start pinning and see what happens. I think that's the biggest thing that people become paralyzed by is they say, oh, how much should I pin? When should I pin? Where should I pin? And then they just stop altogether. And then they say, oh, it doesn't work. Well, it does. You just need to continue to be consistent at it and try. And, as we know, Pinterest is always changing. So it takes consistency for the long haul.
Yeah. And I agree. I think Pinterest is one of those things that you have to have a mindset to say, hey, you know what? I'm willing to invest 6 months into it. I'm willing to take a year into it because what the great thing is, Kate, I think that you notice this for your clients as well as mine, is that once you actually stop pinning, and not that I'm suggesting people should, but you really see that traffic just come consistently. And I've taken vacations for like 3 weeks away from Pinterest and notice that people just keep pinning my stuff. And that's something I love about it.
It's really fascinating to find those. I'm sure you've seen this in Google Analytics. You have these pins that just keep driving traffic for 1 to 2 years. People are still clicking on them, still pinning them, still coming over. So it's not a waste of time for sure.
No, it's not. And one thing that you brought up earlier in the first answer, which I really liked, and I thought maybe you could elaborate because this kind of transitions into our second question. How important is it for a site, whether it's an e-commerce, usually an e-commerce site, to have a blog before they go onto Pinterest?
Really important, because I think when you think about an e-commerce site and you're selling products, the products don't really, if you look at a t-shirt doesn't really give life, but somebody wearing the t-shirt in a certain environment gives it life, gives it purpose, gives it usefulness. It's the same with maybe, I have a client that I work with who does CrossFit. And so how can their products that they sell really how are they tools? How are they useful? I don't know a lot about CrossFit, but how is a certain, tool that you would put on your hands so you don't rip up your hands going to be useful? And how can you write more about that and then create an image for Pinterest that's going to hook people in? Whether it's 4 ways to use this, lifting belt. I don't even know if that's really an appropriate term for it, but bring life to it instead of just a standalone product, because I might just pass that by if I see a t-shirt or a simple shelf. But if you show me how to use that shelf in a room, I'm all over it, because I want to organize or I want to create order, and you've just given that product life to me.
I love that. It's like you're saying, you're giving that product life, which is really what's great about Pinterest. It's visual. So Deanne has a question. Deanna, did you want to jump on to join us on Blab to ask your question in front of our live studio audience? Of course, we gotta wait a little bit and see if Diana's like dun 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 dun. Okay, so she's at work. Okay, it's okay. So we'll keep it our secret. We're not gonna say her Twitter handle so that we won't get her in trouble. But here is Deanna's question. It says, "Would love to hear the life cycle of a pin and how it can ultimately help a business. Like what part of the life cycle rewards the company and business?"
That's a great question. So essentially, let me make sure I'm getting it right. So cycle of a pin, meaning how long it's going to last. Is that kind of where we're going with that? Is the cycle of a pin, if you will, I guess how it ultimately helps. Let's see. I would say that's a tough one to answer. Vincent, what do you think when you first hear that question? I'm trying to make sure I get it right.
Yeah. So Deanna, we just want to make sure that we're clarified. So are you saying by creating a pin that has a very long life cycle, how does that improve business? Is that correct? Is the goal to get more exposure? Okay, so I think that helps clarify.
Yes.
So Deanna's saying, is the goal to get more exposure using pins then?
It is, for sure. Absolutely. Because if we're talking life cycle too, the life cycle of a pin, as we've seen through analytics, can be 1, 2, 3 years. It can be a really long time, especially if it's picked up in search or it's picked up with an email that Pinterest sends out, and then it will constantly send exposure. And so continuing to put your content out there for it to be picked up by other people allows them to return to it, because you want to remember that Pinterest is a place where people they're tucking away ideas. They're storing kind of their dreams or their tips. And so where those are stored, people will go back and they'll reference those. So it helps tremendously in the way of exposure and the long-term goal of continuing to drive people back to your website.
Yeah, and so I think that's a great way to explain everything, Kate. And we've got Suppose I Am, says that I would say gives you exposure over a long period of time, which something we talked about. Let's move into question number 2. We're talking about creating a blog, having that content that brings those products to life. What other mistakes do you see, Kate, that businesses are making when it comes to their Pinterest strategy?
I think a lot of what I see is people just in general pinning something once and just thinking that's it. So, well, I pinned it, last Saturday. I guess I can't pin it again. And so reminding them that they can keep pinning it. They can look for collaborative boards that are in their niche that they can keep pinning to. Again, one of the biggest things that I see over and over is people not organizing their board, especially if they've added a ton of collaborative boards over time. There was that big swing there to get so many group boards. So now I come in contact, we do account cleanups too. So I come in contact with these accounts that are just have 300 boards. And there's no way you could pin to that many boards and really be effective. And so just slash and dash, like it's okay to go through and just at least pare it down to 200 and then take another month and pare it down to 100. But don't think big, think, smaller and smarter, and then continue to build from there. Because if you start big and you try to think smart, you're going to get too overwhelmed with all the boards that you have.
And like you said earlier, Kate, you really need to keep in mind is who's your ideal person. And I know we're complicated people. I know we've got lots of characteristics. We like different things.
Totally.
But the reality is, for example, something that I see very often, and this happened a lot when Pinterest first started, is that you might have a business that's selling furniture, and they're pinning to boards about recipes, which is just weird to me,
So crazy. So crazy. Absolutely. There's that. I think initially it was like cast your nets out wide and see where you're going to catch. And that doesn't work anymore. And it really never works in the beginning. But I think it's like cast your net small and see who it is you're going to get, because the goal isn't to get, it would be awesome, but the goal isn't to get 1 million followers on every page. The goal is to get those small amount of followers that want to buy your product, that are loyal, that want to read your website, that continue to share your stuff, because they're the powerful people, not the 1 million, sea of Pinterest followers. Because, then you don't get a lot. You do get a lot of shares, granted, because you have 1 million people. But if you're selling furniture, chances are low that if there's going to be 1 million people who are going to be interested in couches that you sell. But you might get one sale out of 1 million, but let's say you have 200 followers and you get 10 sales. Well, that's more, those 200 are so much more important. So I really encourage people to think like, don't just look at that number, look at each person. So if you have 200 people, those 200 people matter. And what are you telling those 200 people? Don't think, oh, I really want 210. I really want 230. Okay, that's awesome. But go for who the 200 are and see if you can really wow them with the awesome that you have.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that you really want to focus on your community. And something that a lot of people may not know when you're starting off on Pinterest is that you might be enamored by somebody that has 4 million followers. But the reality is that that's really kind of the amount of followers that follow at least just one board of an account. So someone can have 4 million followers for one particular board, and then you look at it and you go, but wait, there are only 20,000 followers to the other one. So those numbers can be a little bit tricky in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen that quite a few times, and it's been interesting. I've worked with one of those larger accounts, and actually they end up losing a lot of followers, which is really interesting because there's a lot of spam that comes onto those big boards. And so, yeah, it's a tricky balance there.
It is, yeah. And so Vivian has been very patient. She says, one of the things that she says is they don't have enough images. That's a problem when it comes to strategy.
Yeah.
And she also says that they don't know the best way to pin, like white backgrounds and bad faces backgrounds are bad and faces aren't so popular. There's obviously a lot of things that can happen in terms of Pinterest. Contrast of images don't work out very well. But how important is it, Kate, to have lots of images ready to go, whether it's an e-commerce site or it's a blog post actually that's pinnable?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Someone had come to me a couple months back and they said, I don't know anything about Pinterest. I don't know how to use it. What can I do? When can we start pinning? And I said, no, we can't actually start pinning yet because you have nothing for Pinterest. And so I had her start with 35 images of her top post. I said, just start there. And then each week do 2 more and 2 more and 2 more. And she did a great job because she had gone into Canva or into PicMonkey and started creating similar images because actually she wasn't very good at it. So she wanted to pick something she knew first looked good and then replicated it. So she actually did a great job because then all of her images started to look alike. They started to look branded, which was very cool for her content because then people could quickly identify it, which people don't think about all the time. They try to get, if they're really good at images, they can kind of go all over the place, which is fine too. There's nothing with that. If you're great at images, go for it. But if you're not, just start there with that simple template and build out from there.
I agree. Yeah. And I think people feel so overwhelmed that they have to be a graphic designer, but you don't need to be. There's lots of people that are really great at graphic design. And I think the thing is people give themselves too hard of a time when it comes to these kind of things. Like, I need to be perfect.
Yeah.
So I've got Debbie. Debbie, did you want to join in on our blab and ask your question in front of our live studio audience? I know it's not like Oprah. I'm not Harpo Productions, but So let's see if Debbie wants to go. Maybe.
You might get there. You just never know.
Yeah, I should reverse it and call NIP Productions, backwards of pin, just like Oprah. Okay, sure. So I'm going to unlock this seat that we have on Blab, and we are going to get Debbie to jump on board. So while we're waiting, hey, how's it going, Debbie?
It's going good. Thank you.
Fantastic. So all we ask is that tell us a little bit about yourself, ask your question, and Kate, our superstar pinner, will be happy to answer.
Great. So I run a blog, and I have set up my Pinterest so that my blog information is at the top, and I have board covers on everything, and it kind of is a library for my readers. But underneath that, then I have lots of old personal stuff because when I first started, which was way back when you had to get an invitation to Pinterest, then I have all these boards and I get random repins from that, but that's not the focus of my pinning and what I'm trying to get at. So would you remove those or would you just let them fly?
I think it depends on how many you have. For some, I recommend taking it, like, let's say you had 20. I would recommend taking at least half of them to start with and moving them to secret boards. So then you can see, how are you with the 10 gone? Do you really miss them? Do you think like it makes a hole? And then remove maybe 5. Do it kind of slowly tapered over time, putting them in those secret boards. And then as you do that, take maybe your boards you already have for your business and kind of expand maybe one outside of that. What's a niche you can pull out of one of those blog boards so that, or, business boards, so that you continue to build up that base to where then you can't even really see those other ones.
Right. Okay, I get that. That helps.
Okay,
good.
Perfect. Thanks, Debbie. Debbie, did you want to share your, before we go, do you want to share the website to your blog? So just in case my listeners are curious.
Sure. So I'm at debbiestongeland.com. And it's DEBISTANGELAND. You have to channel your inner Norwegian. And I blog about blogging. So I help bloggers who are starting websites of their own kind of get started and equip them with how to get off the ground. So I consider myself the middle school teacher of blogging. Like, I don't teach you how to do it. I don't teach you how to like really start a site from scratch, but I'm not teaching you really fancy expert tricks. I'm like 7th, 8th grade where you kind of have to get the information and know stuff so that you can get into high school. That's me.
That's perfect. Great. Thanks for your question, Debbie.
Thank you.
So perfect. Yeah, how cool is that, huh, Kate? You get to have questions live on Blab, right?
It's awesome. This is such a great forum. It's perfect.
Yeah, I love it. And Vivian actually gave us some great advice as well for the audience. So she's saying, text is also important when you're creating your pins because it contextualizes the pin as if to say, do you see what I see?
Yeah.
Because I do agree. Kate, sometimes I think pretty pictures are nice. But what I found is that, and again, maybe you can share your experience. I found that pretty pictures are nice. They get repinned a lot, but they're not always necessarily getting the click-throughs. I think
Yes.
a pin that has text does actually.
Yeah, no, I agree, because you could take, I saw an example where someone had taken a kid running on a beach, and they could either make it inspirational or informative based on that text overlay. One could be 5 ways to have fun with kids at the beach, or one could be stop and savor the day. Like, each one could lead you to 2 very different posts, all based on what you changed there with that text. So that's a really important thing to think about and to capture, and to think about what font you're using. That's really important. I think, later kind of we might discuss this, but I see a lot of people using real scripty font. And so sometimes it's hard to see on mobile. And so even when you're thinking about those text overlays, check out what it looks like on your phone. Even if you have to upload it to a secret board so you can see it, but think about it. I mean, most people are looking at it not even on an iPad, but on a 4 to 6 inch screen or whatever. Can you see it? Because that's what's really going to pull people in.
I agree. The mobile is so key because, even Pinterest is saying about 80% of the daily usage is happening on mobile devices, and that's just massive. So we're just going to take a quick Pinter mission here. Bad pun, terrible pun.
I love it.
But again, if you click on the Tell a Little Bird and tweet this out, one tweeter will get a chance to win my book, Pinterest to Profits with Pentalysis. It's a 199-page ebook. So again, tweet that out because I'd love to give one of you guys your book. And Kate's going to be talking about something that she's excited to share at the end of the show. Make sure you kind of stay to the end. So let's move on to question number 3. What are some of the most important metrics when it comes to measuring your Pinterest strategy, Kate?
I think, let's say you're just starting out. You're going to want to look at page views, number 1. Are people actually coming over to your website? Because that's going to be a big clue if it's working. So I suggest actually that each person create what I like to call a Pinterest dashboard. And if you can, in Google Analytics, which I know Google Analytics is like a black hole of clicks and graphs. But if you can create something that has your total page views, your total Pinterest page views, top 10 pins that are driving traffic, and then your percentage of Pinterest traffic, that right there will give you just a ton of information about what is coming to your site. And as a result of that, you can go, hey, tons of people are coming for my healthy blueberry muffin. What if I create a healthy banana bread muffin or something like that? Keep building off of that success so that those, links are still pointing back at that. Then really cross compare with Pinterest Analytics. Pinterest Analytics has a lot of information, but it can be a little bit skewed sometimes and not as accurate as Google Analytics. So Pinterest might tell you you're getting 1.2 page views a day or 1.2 million page views a day, when in reality you're getting like 40 or whatever, not a day, a month. A day would be awesome. Can you even imagine 30 million page views a month? So really dig deep in that too, to see, again, like I mentioned earlier, see where people are pinning your content. A great example is we do evaluations of pages to really give people this information. And we found for one woman that her people liked healthy breakfast recipes, healthy snack recipes, and cocktails. It was such a funny mix that I said to her, I was like, your readers just love this. Like, let's just go down those paths and see what happens. But it was so funny to see that's what people were pinning. But she had no idea. She was really trying to cover the whole, especially with healthy, she was trying to cover this whole rainbow of healthy foods. Yeah. Where this gave her the opportunity to focus back on just do snacks and breakfast and then see what happens. So I would suggest to anyone, really just dig, spend an hour, don't spend all day so you're no longer productive. Just spend an hour looking at those two and see what you can uncover.
No, I agree. I think you got to look for the patterns and you got to give the audience what it wants, even if that is cocktails after a healthy breakfast,
Yeah.
you know,
Or
not
a healthy snack with your cocktail.
I know it's like, oh yeah, I'm having a celery with my cocktail, so
Yeah,
it's
with your
absolutely
Bloody
fine.
Mary. It's perfect. You have them together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But just so you know, if you guys ever need a good cocktail recipe, definitely go to Pinterest because there are lots of them for
Yes.
sure that are right there. So I think let's move on to question number 4, which is how important is it to have a mobile strategy for your pins? We were talking about designing pins for mobile. Um, is mobile everything, or how much of it should we worry about?
Yeah, I would say, well, so we know that 80% of viewers are on mobile. So what I would say, at least think about it 50%. Don't go 10 or 20. Think about what people are going to be wanting to store when they're, either a lot of people, I was actually riding downtown on our transit, and I just sat there and looked through Pinterest. And there was a lot of stuff I wanted to save for later. And so thinking about, okay, when someone's just sitting there, maybe it's in the morning, maybe it's in the evening, maybe it's when they're sitting at a doctor's office. So what are they doing that they want to save for later? And are you making images or putting the text overlay to where they can read it, they can catch it too? Making your pins long, that's really important. And I still see people making, a Facebook graphic or Pinterest. They don't work. So you get these squatty little photos that on mobile people just pass by because they miss them.
Yeah, and I agree. And what's interesting is you're trying to capture people in the moment. Like Vivian saying, Pinterest is aspirational. When you use a tablet, they're relaxed, they're in the right mood. So being mobile is crucial in her
Yeah.
opinion. And I totally agree. Is that when you are on mobile or you're relaxing at home on tablet, you're not trying to. You're not trying to think about, okay, what am I going to buy? Sometimes it just happens in the moment. And that's what I really love about
Yeah.
Pinterest. And so I think in terms of the mobile strategy, this is kind of interesting. I want to share with my audience as well, is that the majority actually of traffic for my clients are coming from one device now, which is
Mm,
iPhone. Um,
interesting. Okay.
yeah, and so for the audience, if you don't know this, Kate can elaborate if she likes as well, but you can really dive in deep into your Pinterest analytics. They will tell you by device as well. So are they coming from Android? Are they coming from iPad, iPhone? So I highly encourage you to take a look at the devices being used because it will tell you a lot about your audience. So that's something I think that's really cool about Pinterest is that they tell you where they're coming from.
Totally agree. Absolutely. And I feel like I need to do a little bit of a better job at deep diving into that because you can just click on the all portion and you can see everything. But like you said, targeting those users makes a big difference. And especially people who read articles, I think that's important to know where are they reading them? Are they reading them on the iPad or desktop or whatever? And how can you create more of those? Because people do, they hear from a lot of, especially young moms, who they'll read a lot of parenting articles on Pinterest, which is really interesting because you don't initially think of that. But yeah, it's a great resource for them to quickly grab some parenting advice.
Yeah, and it's funny though, you mentioned that, Kate, because I remember Hology did a study, and I think that they actually said that 39% of active Pinterest users, people that log on to Pinterest once a month, will actually go to Pinterest to look for things such as parenting advice, recipes, before they go to search engines, which really, I mean, that's quite powerful if you think about it, as more
Yeah.
and more people use Pinterest. Um,
Oh, totally. I don't have any friends that look at Google anymore for recipes because they want to see a picture. They want to see what it looks like and maybe how many people have repinned it. That repinned number is really powerful. And it may not even be a good recipe, but it says, oh, hey, people like this. I'm going to try this new pizza dough recipe or whatever. And chances are it is going to be pretty good.
That's true. If a lot of people are repinning it, chances are it's going to be really good. I know somebody's given us a shout out, Saba. I know you're saying hi to us, so we're saying hi back. We're just really bad at typing and conversing at the same time. I'm not going to lie, I'm bad at that, right?
Yeah,
So
I am
I'm bad at
too. Hmm.
that. But I love that, again, Vivian is saying we all love pictures, and Debbie's saying I absolutely use Pinterest to find info before I go to Google. And it seems to be the trend, which actually kind of segues into something that's really interesting, because Elizabeth Arden recently said that they're giving up their Pinterest account. They say, we don't think Pinterest is working at the same level of engagement as their Instagram account. They've been posting on Pinterest for years. Do you think businesses should just give up if they don't see the results they're looking for, even after using it for 3-4 years? Or what do they need to do, Kate, to reevaluate whether it really is or it's not working?
I absolutely don't think they should jump ship at all, mostly because where we look at where Pinterest is going, especially with the buy button, Elizabeth Arden it's been a brand for years. So they have some very loyal followers, and those loyal followers are on Pinterest. They might, Instagram is a great platform too, but on Instagram, you don't get this board with all products or everything that you love. And so, especially when you're moving towards buy button, those users are going to buy, and Pinterest is making it easier and easier for them to do so. I think too, in relation to the whole Google thing, we know that Pinterest links really give that, I can't think of a better word besides like street cred, like to Google, they definitely give this cool handshake to say like, hey, this is important. And guess what? Now all these links go to you, and we think it's really important again. And so 3 to 4 years on Pinterest is, so much has changed during that time. So you have to look at what's the current Pinterest landscape like, and that's a deep dive into what's working. Maybe Elizabeth Arden just hasn't sat down and looked and said, these types of things people are actually buying, and we're going to run with that. But I definitely don't think, they should jump ship, because look at Nordstrom, look at Starbucks even. You have these Target, you have these huge companies that have really tapped into their Pinterest flow, if you will, in the current state of where Pinterest is at, and they're doing great. And I love Pinterest strategy or target strategy with Pinterest, really looking at identifying specific users and getting them to, pin for them, or creating a brand around that pinner or whatever. I think, no, I would never, I think you can definitely put more dollars in Instagram, but don't abandon Pinterest.
I agree. And I think that all you need to do is take a look at sometimes your industry competitors. Sephora is not really a competitor in that sense, but they do such a great job of their Pinterest account. I highly suggest, if you haven't taken a look at Sephora's account, to take a look just to see how active they are with their community and really building it. I've got Ryan. Ryan, I know you got a question. You've been kind of waiting very patiently with that. Would you like to jump on to our blab and ask your question live, or would you prefer that I actually read it out from the sidelines? And of course, it's that waiting period, yeah. And we can play Jeopardy, right? So
yeah, so you do need a song. You need to
I know
background.
I know. So I don't know if Ryan is probably there, but we're gonna go ahead and ask Ryan's question. So Ryan said he just started on. Okay, he's gonna listen because he's in the. A lot of people are in the office today, aren't they, Kate?
No, that's so awesome. I want your job.
Yeah. So anyway, so we're gonna ask Ryan's question. So he said, I just started on Pinterest for original art 2 weeks ago. He's interested in knowing how he can use it for best results. What's your advice, Kate?
Oh, I would say with anybody starting out, when you're creating your boards, think of the 5 boards you want to create that display your artwork, or just start creating this board that displays your art and communicates to the buyer what you want them to know about your art, or how they can get in touch with you. Or I would say start with 5 boards that you're going to create that go around your art, and then start with 5 other boards that are just outside that niche. So maybe there is a particular type of art that you teach, or that people could learn, or maybe there's some how-tos in there, or ways. I am not an art aficionado, so I would want to know how do I look for quality art? How do I buy art? How do I, how does it fit within my home? How do I even know my style? And so starting to ask those questions and then building just a few basic boards. Pin consistently. I would say start with just 10 pins a day, a little bit of yours, a little bit of someone else that you trust and respect. They've curated good content, and then just see how it does. And then just become familiar with it. I think that's the biggest thing is some people are so trepidatious as they go into it. It's kind of like this, I'm not really gonna, they either jump in the deep end in the really cold water and get it completely wrong, or they don't jump in at all. So there is that healthy balance of just start and just see how it works for you and see how it works with your products and with your platform.
And I'm going to put my 2 cents in as well, Kate. So Ryan, something that Kate suggested, which is, pinning other people's resources. I know a lot of artists generally, they kind of have their friends, they work in groups of people. Don't be afraid to start a group Pinterest board that is of the art that belongs to you and your friends, because that way, instead of trying to compete, you're collaborating and everybody's art is getting exposed. So hopefully that will help you out, Ryan. Really appreciate your question. So we're going to wrap up. Wrap up.
I was going to say just real quick, specifically too, and eventually down the line, but that, and this is not a shameless plug, it's more of a fit, but that's actually why I created Pinterest 101 in the beginning, was because they had so many people coming to me with these types of questions that they just didn't know where to start. And so that course too will kind of break it down step by step for you.
That's perfect, because actually we're going to segue into that. So Kate, I know you've got an awesome course for people that are just starting on Pinterest. Can you tell us a little bit more about it and where they can find more information?
Yeah, so Pinterest 101 is for that new user who's never been on Pinterest, or a user that is going from Pinterest to business and just doesn't know how to break it down into very simple steps. So I created Pinterest 101. It's just 5 to 6 videos. They're less than 8 minutes long. Each one has an action item for you to do, and it starts with how to set up your profile correctly into starting off with your strategy. And everything in between, board creation, titling, describing, every detail that you would need to be able to create a really firm foundation. And you can find that at simplepinmedia/pinterest.com/Pinterest101. And for any user today that's on, you can get $10 off by just putting in the code PINBLAB, and that will give you $10 off the course.
That's perfect. So again, thank you so much for joining me, Kate. Just so you know, for our podcast listeners, this is the end of our podcast session. But again, if you've got questions and you're on Blab right now, we're going to stay on for a little while longer, and Kate can type in the website. But again, for the Pictures to Profits listeners, thank you so much for joining this